Greetings. I'm Neil Rowe Miller. For the last 8 years, I've been working in East Africa, promoting, among other things, conservation agriculture. And today I'd like to share some of the lessons that we've learned about scaling up conservation agriculture. I work in a team of 4 basically in-house consultants who support Canadian Food Grains Bank programming. CFGB is a consortium of 15 Canadian organizations. We work in sub-Saharan Africa in 16 different countries, and our implementing partners include around 60 NGOs scattered throughout the countries that you see here on this map. As you probably know, the classic CA principles include minimizing soil disturbance, maximizing soil cover either through crop residue use or through cover crops. And the third principle is maximizing crop diversity. These principles are very effective in maintaining soil quality and improving soil quality over time. This is a graph of soil erosion reduction as a function of soil cover, which is one of the key CA principles. And as you can see here, as mulch cover increases, soil loss decreases. These are 3 different studies from sub-Saharan Africa. These are 2 graphs looking at soil health and the effect of CA on soil health within our own programming in East Africa. The graph on the left here is Ethiopia, the graph on the right from Tanzania, and the blue bars are biological activity in soils which have been managed with conservation agriculture, compared to the red bars which are managed by conventional agriculture, fields just adjacent of each other. And as you can see, soil biological activity, which is the driver of soil health, is much higher under the CA fields. One of the challenges with CA, however, is that those 3 principles alone often don't increase yields over the short run. So this is a study which was done in Eastern and Southern Africa, published in 2013. The green squares are on-farm trials, the yellow ones on-station trials. And this 0 line right across the middle indicates that the yields of conservation agriculture using only those 3 principles alone were equivalent, the same yields as those from conventional agriculture in these experiments. If the square is above the 0 line, it means that CA yielded more, and the percentages here on the y-axis. But if they're below the line, it means that CA actually produced less than conventional. So as you can see here, often we do get higher yields, but at other times we don't get as high a yield with conservation agriculture, the 3 principles alone. For this reason, many advocates of CA promotion have argued that there should be a 4th principle of CA, and that is soil fertility enhancement. This is a picture which was taken in 2014 in one of our project farmers' fields in Tanzania. And this man worked very hard to apply those 3 CA principles. But his maize crop is still suffering because of soil fertility problems, probably phosphorus and nitrogen deficiency. So without good soil fertility management, the 3 CA principles often are not as effective. And this man, although he worked very hard, is not going to yield much, or harvest much rather, from his CA field. Interestingly enough, when we combine the 3 CA principles with soil fertility management, we can actually enhance the response to each of those methods. So by using CA principles, we often improve soil water status. And this is a study that was done back in the 1990s, looking at the orange line here is soil moisture status from May through September of zero tillage or conservation agriculture field compared to the green line, which is a plowed treatment. So soil water status is enhanced significantly. If we try to increase soil fertility in a field where moisture stress is a limiting factor, like you see here on the green line, in fact, the soil fertility practices won't be as effective. So by combining soil fertility with conservation agriculture, we can enhance the response to improved soil fertility, and we can also enhance the response to the three, or the benefits rather, of the three conservation agriculture principles. We've begun referring to what we promote in our programs as CA+. We do promote this 3 CA principles because we feel that they're fundamental to good farming practices. However, we also promote alongside those principles good agronomic practices which can help enhance crop yields in the short run. And soil fertility enhancement is at the top of this list, but precision planting, modern varieties of crops are also something that are often included in our programming. Together, CA plus good agronomic practices we refer to as CA+. And this concept, this CA+ concept, is a real key to scaling up the number of farmers and the number of hectares that we have under CA in our project. This is a graph of comparative yield CA to conventional over a 5-year period of Canadian Food Grains Bank supported programming. And you can see here with CA+, in a dry year, we can get as much as 4 times the yield of an adjacent conventional plot. In wetter years, such as these 3 lower bars here, we're still getting double the yield. As a result, in our programming, we've seen widespread adoption of CA+. In 2020, we estimate around 67,000 farmers were trained as a direct result of our training and our programming, but another 15,000, and that's probably an underestimate because it's difficult to measure the number of farmers who adopt spontaneously based on the example that they see from other farmers around them. So I'd like to talk in the rest of my time about 2 things. One is technologies for scaling up or increasing plot size of CA+ per farmer. And secondly, extension methods for scaling out or increasing the number of farmers adopting CA+. Scaling up, very, very commonly, the most frequently mentioned constraint to scaling up CA is a lack of mulch for soil cover. Labor demands is another limiting factor. So with soil cover, these are 2 women in eastern Kenya. They're carrying grass not for covering their farms, but for feeding their livestock. And in fact, among the Wakamba, livestock are a critical part of their farming system. If you tell these women not to feed that grass to their animals, but rather to use it for mulching their fields, they will simply refuse. So we have to find ways that we can address livestock needs at the same time as we address the needs for keeping soil covered. One response to this dilemma is that we teach farmers how to manage the crop residues that they have so that the best of those crop residues are given to their livestock, and the rest are retained for soil cover. So this, in maize production systems, this is fairly simple. What we do is we encourage farmers to remove the tops of the maize plants before the crop is actually mature, dried down, once it's physiologically mature but not dried, and feed that to the livestock. And in fact, the forage that they get for their livestock is of a much higher feed value than it is if they allow the maize plants to dry completely until the point where they're ready for grain harvest. In this way, we feed our animals. We also feed the soil. So give the best of the livestock and give the rest of the soil. And similar strategies, I should say, can be used with other crops aside from maize, although I won't go into those today. Second mulch solution is cover crops. And I think I can say with confidence that virtually every conservation agriculture project that we support and work with today has a component of promoting cover crops. In the low to midland maize production area of East Africa, which is most of where we work, there are 3 species that we commonly promote, and others as well, but these are the big 3. Pigeon pea is a fantastic intercrop with maize because it's at its young stages it provides no competition to the maize plants. But once the maize is mature, pigeon peas can begin to grow, produce a crop for human consumption, produce forage for animals, firewood, and soil cover. Lablab is another widely promoted cover crop. Again, lablab can be a little more competitive than pigeon pea, but if we delay planting of lablab and make sure that we have an adequate maize population, we can minimize the competition between lablab and maize. And as with pigeon pea, it stays small until maize harvest. Once the maize is mature, then the lablab grows up, produces human food, produces livestock fodder, and keeps our soils covered. This is lablab residue after maize harvest and just before lablab harvest. Cowpea, commonly grown throughout sub-Saharan Africa, but the varieties of cowpea that have been promoted, I think, from most breeding programs on the continent have not been the kind of cowpeas that cover soils effectively. They've been more early maturing, small statured cowpea varieties. If we want to use cowpea as a cover crop, we need more of the vining cover crop type cowpea varieties, many of which are old traditional varieties, and we need to hang on to those. And again, cowpeas will stay green long beyond maize harvest, providing food and providing soil cover. A second factor limiting scale-up of conservation agriculture is labor demands. Throughout much of sub-Saharan Africa, CA has been promoted as a method that's implemented using a hand hoe. And what that does is it shifts labor from, in many communities, from men to women. Men operate oxen, they plow fields with oxen. If we tell farmers to go back to using a hand hoe, oftentimes it's the women who end up doing that. But we can use oxen for conservation agriculture as well. This is an ox team ripping a field using a Magoye ripper. And just an example of the impact of introducing mechanization in conservation agriculture. This is a project from Zimbabwe, where in 2013, the vast majority of the participants in their project were still farming less than 1/20th of a hectare of land, about 65% of their participants. But 2 years later, after having introduced ripping technology, they went from less than 10% of their farmers, about 1% of their farmers farming more than 1 acre of land, this is hectares, to over 30% of their farmers were farming more than a hectare with conservation agriculture. So a dramatic scale up in just a 2-year period of time, and also, as I said, has significant gender implications, since typically men in sub-Saharan Africa are the ones who use mechanized equipment. Magoye rippers we buy for around $50 US, manufactured on the continent. They can be attached to a moldboard plow frame. But even more effective than this, in some contexts, is an ard plow that we have adopted from traditional farmers in Ethiopia called maresha, which costs about $7. And so this is becoming popular not just in Ethiopia, but in other countries of East Africa. This is a field ripped with a maresha, and as you can see, the planting furrows are quite effective and save a lot of labor. And this is the first trial that we did of a maresha in Tanzania. Since we began using maresha as a ripping tool, we've also adapted it now as a minimum tillage planter. And so this is a maresha ripper, but it has a seeding mechanism built onto it as well. So we can now plant as well as rip all in one pass. And we've been able to plant maize, beans, sorghum, millet, just about any crop that you can imagine. This is a field that we planted to beans using that maresha planter. And as you can see, there's no tillage that's been done on this field. It's covered with weeds, and we planted right into those weeds. Following planting, then we applied a herbicide to kill those weeds off. And with one additional weeding with a hoe, we were able to get quite a good bean crop. So I'd like to shift now to talking about scaling out, increasing numbers of farmers adopting conservation agriculture. And the first strategy that I'd like to really stress is the use of lead farmers. I think virtually every CA project that we have today incorporates some model of using lead farmers. And this is a project from Ethiopia that was one of the first to do this. Their lead farmers are paid, and they're expected to continue farming, but also to promote CA to other farmers in their neighborhoods. And each farmer is expected to work with around 20 additional farmers. Another model, this is also from Ethiopia, a different project. Their model is to have every farmer become a lead farmer. So if you're trained within their project in southern Ethiopia, you're expected to recruit 2 more farmers and train them to use CA. So in this picture, the woman in the middle is a lead farmer, and she has recruited these other 2 farmers. These lead farmers are entirely volunteers. They don't receive any compensation, but they do this as a service to their community and in gratitude for having been trained themselves. A couple of key ideas or considerations in using lead farmers. First of all, you should never select your lead farmers in the first year of a project. It's better to wait and see which farmers are motivated to use CA+, and which ones are working with their neighbors or their relatives promoting the same. those are the ones who then in year 2 you can select as a farmer trainer or as a lead farmer. Establish clear expectations with a written contract. So the lead farmer should know what's expected of them, the farmers that they're working with should know what's expected of them, and the project should know. So all 3 parties need to be a part of developing the expectations, and a written contract is a very powerful way to keep people true to the agreement that has been made between the group and the lead farmer. And then you need to develop effective systems to support those lead farmers. So once they're out there and working, ongoing continuing education, visits from project staff, other forms of encouragement are key to keeping them effective. And a second key strategy for scaling out is to select the beneficiaries or the participants of a project based on their interest in conservation agriculture plus. And this seems like maybe a self-evident kind of strategy, but in fact many projects begin by selecting all of their participants at the outset of the project. And I would contend that that's a mistake. When you do that, many farmers may not be at all interested, may not even have enough land to implement conservation agriculture plus. So a better strategy is to start off in year 1 with a relatively small number of farmers. Then, based on the farmers around them who have seen the results of their CA plots, you recruit other farmers in year 2 who have already shown interest. So this is a picture from Tanzania, and the woman in the middle began CA 1 year, and her neighbors got interested because they saw the performance of her maize crop, and they also wanted to join. So by selecting incrementally other participants along the years of a project, you end up with farmers who are far more motivated and far more likely to implement CA+. And I guess finally, as we talk about monitoring and evaluation of projects, would like to point out that one of the key indicators of success is spontaneous adoption. The idea that I was talking about earlier, where you train 1,000 farmers in a project, but you have maybe 2,000 in the community who are actually implementing conservation agriculture. When you see that, you know you've had a successful impact in the community. So just in summary, scaling up, some key strategies: crop residue management, cover crop use, and appropriate mechanization. Scaling out, use of lead farmers in the strategies that I described, and self-identification of beneficiaries. I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to seeing you down the line. Thank you very much.